Okay, I think we are live. Thank you to everyone who has joined our Ask Me Anything session with me, Xenia from the team, and Christoph. We're very excited to have you here. And Staatenlos Denationalized.me was a sponsor at Bansko Nomad Fest last month. And we had so many people asking questions, and that we thought we'd dedicate a bit more time to our international community. So we will be going through international questions and inquiries first, as we've had a lot of resources for our German community. So we will start. And yeah, Christoph, do you have anything to say about yourself? Where are you right now? I'm in Norway on a sailboat. And where are you?
Yeah, we just crossed the Øresund bridge from Denmark into Sweden. I'm here in the car, as you see, with my family. We're visiting a friend in Sweden. We still have 3 hours to go. But yeah, I'm now here for 1 hour to answer all the questions everyone has.
Very nice. Okay. Then let's jump right in, I would say. I saw a question about Italy from Sylvia. Let me see if I can blend in. Italian in Spain, registered with AIRE. I want to be residency free. After signing off as a tax resident, do I just inform the town hall or also AIRE?
Yes, so Italians generally have to get into this registry. Yeah, AIRE, that's the foreign Italian registry. And in order to get in there, you need to provide an address, like a proof of address in another country. Yeah, so once you have this proof of address, like a rental contract, utility bill, or something else, you can get into that registry, and that's enough to get out of the Italian tax system. But you need to be in the registry, otherwise you don't get out of the Italian tax system.
Okay. I see another question from Alex. You registered in Germany 2.5 years ago, company in Estonia, no tax residency, temporary residency and property in Mexico. What is the best tax residency to avoid Mexican taxes? He won't stay more than 6 months anywhere.
Yeah, Mexico is an interesting case because in Mexico you are not liable to taxes based on the amount of days you stay. Yeah? You can be more than half a year in Mexico without triggering tax residency, because in Mexico the concept is based more on your residency, on your accommodation, and even more on your assets and your income. So if your income or your assets are not more than 50% in Mexico, it's relatively easy to avoid Mexican tax residency, even if you stay there long term. Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't stay 6 months anywhere in Mexico, the big question is, what else do you need? The thing is, also a tax residency somewhere else would work to like overscribe Mexico. Yeah. So any tax residency anywhere else in the world, and Mexico will never trouble you at all. So you can do pretty much anything. Bulgaria can work. Yeah, generally you only get a tax residency certificate after 6 months in the country. However, it's enough to just be registered in Bulgaria, have your home available. If you want to pay voluntary taxes, you can do it without any minimum stay as well.
Very good.
But generally, like for Mexico, you don't need a tax residency, like I explained. Yeah, so just do what I mentioned first, and that's fine.
Very good. Does Ireland care about days spent in the country? Do they follow a strict 183 days rule, or are they okay with a week or even 0 days? And then the question about day trading with own funds outside of Ireland.
Yeah, tax residency in Ireland is not only determined by the 183 days rule, there's also a so-called 280 days in 2 years rule. So it's like 3.5 months a year based on a 2-year period, and which makes you taxable as well. So if you want a tax residency certificate again, which shows that you are only liable to tax in Ireland, you have to stay those 280 days in 2 years. If you just want like a residency where you can declare some taxes, you don't have this minimum stay, but you don't get this residency certificate. Yeah, that's the distinction. It's the same in other countries like Malta. If you're day trading with your own funds outside of Ireland, if you are non-dom, if you consider tax resident, then it's still tax-free. However, you should be a bit careful. Like if you're day trading and it's all originating from within Ireland, it can be an issue. So it might be wiser to have like a foreign company with foreign management to be on the safe side. But generally, capital gains from Ireland as a non-dormant tax-free as well. If they're not, it can be 33% local capital gains tax. So that's why you should be careful if you're really day trading from a computer within Ireland. Yeah.
Okay. Is the Georgian bank account private or business, or can it be used for both? And is there a business and a private account for each?
We currently just open private accounts, personal accounts in Georgia remotely. We can only do business accounts for Georgian companies. So if you do a sole entrepreneurship or a limited company in Georgia, we can help you open a business account there. But everything else is personal. I already saw some people who used the personal account for private purposes, even with the LLC. Sorry, for business purposes, even with LLC. That's not officially legal, but it might work. Yeah, but we don't recommend it. The personal account you should only use for personal stuff, not for receiving business transactions.
What's the best setup if you travel for 5 months and work the other 7 months, but always in different countries?
Well, it really depends which countries you're working in. And if it's only one country, I mean, if you work more than 7 months in one country, you'll be liable to taxes there. But I assume it's not the case. So you have like 2, 3, 4 countries you're working in the other 7 months. Then it really depends what you're working. Are you physically working as an employee, or are you self-employed, or whatever? I mean, that's it's really different what the case is. So generally, if you say you are a perpetual traveler, LLC could work, American LLC, invoicing tax-free, having no accounting, recognized all over the world with good bank accounts. It can be a very good solution for almost any business case, but here I just don't know the details. Yeah.
Can I open a US LLC now while I'm still living in Germany? I want to leave the country end of the year.
Yes, you can open it. If you open it now before you leave, you officially have to register the company with the authorities. If it's active 1 month, if it's inactive, it's 14 months. So it's probably you don't even have to register it, because before you deregister yourself. There is no exit tax, obviously, if the LLC doesn't have any income. Yeah, if there's zero income, there is no value in the company, so there won't be an exit tax applying to it. That's an important point. Yeah, in Germany and in many other countries, exit tax will apply on any foreign company as well. It's always about you leaving the country, having shares, not about like having a German company within Germany. Yeah, so that could be an issue if you use the company, but if you don't use it, if you just want to form it and prepare everything, it's totally fine. However, we recommend you should form the LLC around 1 month before you're leaving, so you don't pay extra, and everything is ready once you leave, but you don't have like any additional cost to it.
I love your podcast. Question 1, what is the best method to continue living in Austria, but at the same time cash out crypto with 0% tax, and how to do it?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. If you want to continue living in Austria, it's pretty good for crypto trading. Crypto trading is tax-free in Austria. However, of course, if you cash it out, the high taxes begin. You can do certain things about that, for example, with foundations. In Austria, it's relatively easy to form a Liechtenstein foundation. And the nice thing in Austria is there is no gift tax. Yeah, if you donate your money into a foundation, there is no gift tax. However, there's a so-called special tax on gifting money to foundations, but that's only around 5%. Yeah, so with only 5%, you can get your money into the foundation. The foundation is legally recognized in Austria, and the foundation doesn't pay any taxes on capital gains on crypto. So a Liechtenstein foundation is completely tax-free if you cash out crypto to fiat. So that could be a very good alternative. However, foundations are quite complex. I should discuss that in more detail, but that could work. You could also, of course, relocate your residency to Germany, for example. A very nice combination for many people is living in the Alps in Germany, being tax-free on crypto after 1 year holding period, and having an Austrian company trading the cryptos. In Germany, trading cryptos is taxed very highly. In Austria, within a GmbH, is taxed not at all. So you can trade over the GmbH and hold long-term privately in Germany. So then, of course, you need to relocate your residency to Germany, which still is, at least regarding to crypto, pretty good in Europe. Yeah.
Very cool. We want to move to Thailand, but keep our house here in Portugal and rent it out, I guess. I guess I need to still pay taxes for the rent here in Portugal, or what possibility do we have?
Yes, of course. If you have a house rented out anywhere in the world, you generally have to pay tax on it. It's so-called restricted tax liability. You only have to pay on the income of the rent, not on anything else. And if you do it personally, you have to pay income tax. If you do it with a company, which might be better, you only pay corporate tax. So generally, I would say it's really dependent on the country. The first 20, 30, 40,000 euros, it's generally better for the progressive income tax. However, after a certain amount, the corporate tax, which normally is flat, will be better from a tax perspective. Also, if you do it over a company, it might be better because you don't need to do personal tax declarations. Then you might just do a company tax declaration and no more tax declarations personally in the country you lived in before. So that could also be an advantage. But you cannot really avoid it. Yeah. The only thing you can avoid is not renting it out. And then, of course, it might be an issue again with your personal tax residency, your center of vital interest, and so on. Or have property in countries without any income tax, like Dubai, that you can rent it out tax-free.
Very cool. So is it a good idea to live with an LLC in Thailand with DTV visa and work digital at Germany market?
Yes, it's generally a very good idea because Thailand is a very good tax residency, which is tax-free on foreign income, but still has a tax treaty with Germany. So you're pretty safe in Thailand if you live there more than half a year. You won't pay any tax on your LLC, at least not on income remitted to Thailand. Yeah, Thailand had changing rules. At the moment, it's like everything you bring into Thailand has to be taxed in Thailand. And bring into means basically everything, withdrawing cash from the ATM, wiring into Thailand. What else? That will all constitute a taxable transfer. This will change again from next year. Basically, everything you have offshore of Thailand for 2 years and then bring into Thailand will still be considered tax-free. Yeah, this is a evolving rule, which is now a bit better. Before, until 2 years ago, you had the rule 1 year outside of Thailand, it was tax-free. Now it will be 2 years outside of Thailand will be tax-free, even if it's remitted to Thailand. It's a bit complex to understand, but generally it's the same rule you have in Malta or in Ireland, the typical non-dom countries. Remittance-based tax, what you bring into the country has to be taxed. Yeah, but other than that, Thailand is still a great country, basically tax-free on everything you invest outside of Thailand or spend outside of Thailand. And the LLC combines very well with that. Yeah.
All right. Can a PT, a perpetual traveler, take advantage of the double taxation treaty agreement between Malta, Spain, or Portugal and the USA?
It can, but personal, that means you need tax residency in those countries. So, of course, you could maybe have a personal tax residency in Malta, but in order to prove that to the US, you generally need a tax residency certificate, and that requires you to stay half a year again in Malta. Yeah, we already had this case a few times in these questions. You can voluntarily pay tax in those countries without any minimum stay, but once you need this tax residency certificate, you generally need to have your minimum stay of half a year plus. However, you can also claim those advantages of a treaty with a limited company. So you can just form a Malta company, stay perpetual traveler, and have the Malta company claiming the double tax treaty. Of course, then the Malta company needs to own the assets. But if it's of, for example, stocks or dividends, then you can reduce the withholding tax with the limited company. Generally, you wouldn't use Malta for that, but Cyprus. Cyprus is very advantageous because in Cyprus, capital gains and dividends are tax-free, and you have very good treaties with most countries of the world. So generally for PTs who want to optimize the assets tax-wise, a Cyprus company is the right thing to do.
Very good. Hello, we, Maria and Philip from Austria. We want to move on a catamaran 2026 and sail around the world. We are looking for the solution to relocate our tax residency without a stay in this country.
Yes, I mean, the question is what the tax residency should do. I guess the people rather want to sail than staying a certain time in a certain country. Of course, tax residency normally always means half a year in a country. Yeah. Now there are certain exceptions to that rule. In Europe, for example, we have Cyprus with 60 days, Malta, a special program with 3 months, Ireland, what I already told, 280 days in 2 years. But there is much nicer things outside of the European Union. Yeah, one we do a lot is Paraguay. Xenia can also tell you a lot about Paraguay. And the nice thing about Paraguay is that it's possible to obtain a residency certificate there without any stay. You just need to travel there twice or 3 times in order to get everything sorted, and you need to wait several months. But then you can have tax residency in Paraguay without staying there. If you're a sailor, there might be other alternatives. Yeah, for example, some Caribbean nations like Antigua and Barbuda, which is also very nice for sailing, have good programs. There, for example, you pay $20,000 minimum tax a year, or like maximum tax, like a lump sum tax. You need a home there, but that doesn't need to be too expensive. And then you get a tax residency certificate as well. Or for example, Gibraltar has a very nice scheme. Many people don't know about it. Because in Gibraltar, your catamaran can qualify as residency. Yeah, you don't need to buy a house there. Generally, you need to do that. But boat qualifies as house if it sails within a Gibraltar flag. And then you also need to pay around £28,000 a year in like lump sum taxes, but you get a tax residency without staying there. So that could be interesting moves as well. However, Paraguay is much cheaper and much easier. So generally, we recommend the Paraguay solution.
Very cool. If I would stay a bit longer than 183 days in a certain country and just leave after that, are there likely any consequences?
Well, that really depends on the country. Some countries are very strict about it, while some other countries probably wouldn't mind at all. Yeah. So generally, the higher the taxes are and the more first world, I would say, the country is, the worse it is. In like more third world countries, which lower taxes or no taxes at all, of course, you don't need to worry. But I mean, it's really difficult to say. Generally, we advise you not to go over this date. I mean, if you go over it and then leave the country and then don't plan to come back ever, of course, that could work as well. But also really dependent on the country. Some countries in like the US or Spain or so are quite strict about that.
Okay. I want to live 9 months per year in Spain and either pay no taxes or minimize the tax.
Yes, generally over half a year, you will be taxable in Spain. However, there is the so-called Beckham law. That's a special scheme for foreigners coming to Spain. And with the Beckham law, you can be exempted from foreign income for 6 years. So all your foreign income won't be taxable, while local income will be taxed only half, like 24% flat on local income, foreign income tax-free. But it's important that you really can prove that the income is supplied outside of Spain. Yeah, if you're like a consultant or service provider and obviously providing the services from Spain, that won't work. But for example, if you have an e-commerce company and you have employees outside of Spain and the manager out of Spain doing certain work, then it can well work. You can even have your American LLC tax-free with a manager locally or anywhere else in the world like Paraguay, and then use this LLC completely tax-free from Spain for the first 6 years. So this is quite a common solution for many of our clients. Many of them move to Spain. With that solution, you can live all the year in Spain and still be completely tax-free. And the nice thing about it, you're also completely exempted from wealth taxes, from reporting requirements, like reporting of your bank accounts, what you normally need to do in Spain. Donation, inheritance taxes. So it's a pretty good solution if you want to do it. The only thing you need to do for that is you need to prove a business reason to move to Spain. Yeah, you either need to be employed in Spain, or you need to be sent from like a foreign employer into Spain, or start a company within Spain. And that should be like a long-term solution. Like if you open a restaurant or like a little, I don't know, little shop where you sell clothes, that could well work. But you really need to prove this business reason to go into Spain. Otherwise, you won't be entitled to the back-end scheme. But there's a lot of solutions to that.
Nice. What is the problem with the Dubai influencers having mostly German content, even though they fully live in the UAE? I guess this was in the news recently.
Yes, it was in the news last week. There's a lot of like tax issues at the moment because a lot of Germans, like younger people, don't pay taxes. But there's a lot of misunderstanding. Even if you read like the news, the tax authorities put on the internet, it's clearly about people having only letterbox addresses in Dubai. Yeah, that doesn't mean companies. It's not about letterbox companies. It's about claiming to be Dubai resident, but still staying more than half a year in Germany. So they just say they are in Dubai, but in reality they live far more than half a year in Germany and still have a home available in Germany, like the typical criteria to be considered tax resident. Generally, there's not an issue at all with German content. There can be a like withholding tax, of course, on copyrights. Yeah, for example, if you earn copyright income from a German source, generally it has 15% withholding tax if it goes outside of the European Union. And on certain transactions, there can be restricted tax liability, like on rental income. There is this stuff, for example, for musicians and other professions in the entertainment industry. They can, like if you work in Germany, for example, as a model, have a photo shooting or something like that, this can be completely taxed as well because you physically perform it in Germany. But for most people, like typical service providers, consultants, you can have German clients without any issue. Really depends here on the detailed case. Yeah.
Is Nauru citizenship okay for a backup plan as a German, or I guess for anybody? And Nauru is one of those that you can buy the Nauru citizenship, right? That's what this refers to.
Yes, Nauru is a fairly recent citizenship. We are not big fans of it, but can be a good plan as well. We mostly do Vanuatu, which is more or less the same price. A bit different from the bureaucracy, but generally more legitimate. Also, it's just a much nicer country. Vanuatu has 85 islands. While Nauru is a very bad, I've been there, very bad single island in the middle of nowhere, which is not super attractive. So I'm Vanuatu citizen now, of course. I'm a bit biased, that's the word. But I wouldn't want to be a Nauru citizen. It has a very bad reputation. Yeah. But it's possible, of course. We can help with Nauru citizenship as well if you really want to do it. But generally, I wouldn't recommend it. There's much more pros for Vanuatu if you want a Pacific citizenship at all.
Very good. Can I get residency, for example, in Paraguay while I'm still registered in Austria or any other country? I guess this would also apply registered in any other country.
Yes, of course. You can have as many residences as you want. How many do you have, Xenia?
Oh, I have to count like 4 or 5. 4, I think. 5.
You have more than me, yeah. I just have basically 2 residences at the moment, Panama and Paraguay, active. Yeah, and you're really gathering them very hard. So yes, residency in Paraguay is possible while you're still in Austria. It's not a tax residency, obviously. It's just a backup plan. Just a residency which gives you the opportunity to live there full term, but not the requirement to do so. Yeah, generally, you just have to visit every 3 years. to keep the Paraguay residency active. And we really recommend that as a plan B in case of bad things happening in Europe. You can always travel to Paraguay and be safe.
Okay. And all these questions, they can be about any country. So did you ever stay in Germany or any other country for 183 days, it should say, and did they try to make you taxable in that country, even though you're no longer a tax resident?
Well, me not. The last 11 years, the maximum I stayed in Germany was maybe 30 days. Maybe this year it's a bit more for certain reasons, but it will still be below 60 days. And with this short durations, nothing will happen. Of course, if you stay more than 180, if someone else stays more than 180 days in Germany, it can happen. But the thing is, it's like the Schengen area. There's not really border controls. Now there is certain border controls coming into Germany overland. And sometimes with the plane as well, but it's not full scale. And generally, there's no one from the tax authority with a calendar in his hand ticking boxes how long you're in the country or not. Yeah. So what tax authorities do, that was also in the news, is they of course look into the social media accounts of people, and then if they only see videos of creators doing stuff in Germany more than half a year, obviously, many people post many stories a day, and then they really go through that stories and see it's always Germany, Germany, Germany. Then of course they can try to be more detailed and thorough and have an investigation, and then things can happen. But generally, from itself, nothing will happen. Actually, 95% of cases in Germany, which are in court about those stuff, is denunciation. Yeah, someone like your neighbor or your ex-partner or something knows about this fact and gives it to the authorities, and they investigate and find it out. Yeah.
Okay, I see a lot of questions very specific to Germany, so I'll skip over those and try to go to the more international ones. This one is Switzerland. We want to go to Switzerland for 2 to 3 years and then move on. Is a LLC a good solution?
LLCs are not a good solution for Switzerland. Switzerland is not a tax haven. It's better than Germany, obviously, but it's not a tax haven. Even in the better municipalities and cantons, you still pay around 20% tax or even more. And Switzerland has rules on foreign companies as well. It's tax evasion if you have an LLC and don't declare it in Switzerland. Tax evasion isn't that highly punished in Switzerland as it is in Austria or Germany, but still, we wouldn't recommend it. If you move to Switzerland, you should generally do a Swiss company in a low tax municipality like Schaffhausen or Zug or Luzern. You pay around 11% in corporate tax, and then you pay another 10% on distributing the money to yourself. Yeah, legally, you cannot have an LLC tax-free in Switzerland.
I guess the question is, so in your case, would you say that you should first have a Swiss company, and then when they leave Switzerland in a few years, then they should close the Swiss company and start a US LLC?
I mean, theoretically, they can use a LLC already now, but pay taxes on it like a Swiss company. That's possible. Mm-hmm. And once they're gone, they have the same company. Yeah, you can do the same in Germany and basically any other country. You can have a company anywhere in the world, but if the management is where you live, you have to pay local taxes on it.
But the moment they leave Switzerland, the LLC would then also be tax-free, correct?
Yes, and the good thing about Switzerland is that there is no exit taxation. Yeah, in Germany and Austria and so on, there would be another problem that you have an exit taxation applied on the LLC. But in Switzerland, that doesn't exist so far. No.
A lot of people talk about problems with opening a bank account for my US LLC in the US. What's the state of the art and the reality?
Well, that really depends on the address you have on your LLC. If you have the typical registered agent address, if you wanted to have it very cheap, form the LLC for $200, you can do that, but then generally don't get a bank account in the US because it's just a address you share with 10,000 other LLCs. So you should get a better address, like a nice office address, or even what we offer, for example, in Florida is a rental contract, a unique suite number, like only you have the suite number, and rental contract confirming this. And with this solution, which costs $1,000 extra for our clients, they are able to get any US bank account. Of course, there's other requirements. Sometimes it's better to have a personal tax number as well. Sometimes it's advisable to have accounting or tax declarations, which you can do voluntarily. But generally, once you have this premium rental contract we offer, we can get you into a lot of US online banks. And we also offer nowadays accounts with other like real banks in the US, like Chase and other ones. So you can inquire with us for that. Yeah.
Hello, I'm a Greek citizen that became a US citizen living in the US. In this case, do you and your team support with taxes with a health coaching business?
Well, if you become a US citizen, you have a lot of liabilities. You will be taxed wherever you are because you're taxed on your citizenship. So in order to help you, we can consult you. We can try to optimize it. But that really depends on your tax situation in the US. Often we have to first have like green light from a US CPA to like do the international structuring. We don't do tax declarations. Yeah, we are not accountants. We don't do tax declarations in Germany, nor in the US, nor anywhere else in the world. We are like strategic consultants to ideally pay no taxes at all. So you don't need this tax declarations anymore.
What is the best, easiest compliance residency in Europe for a banking account?
Well, in Europe, many people choose Spain because Spain is quite strict if you spend a lot of time there. But if you don't do it, it's a very good compliance residency because in Spain you cannot be taxed on the fact that you have a accommodation there. So if you have a house there or even rent a flat there, this is not a reason to tax you like it is in Germany and many other countries in Northern Europe. Yeah, and it's also quite easy to get a tax number in Spain, the so-called NIE, Número Identidad de Extranjero. And this is basically, it's not the real tax number, but it's basically looking like one. And so even if you don't register in Spain and you're not liable to taxes in Spain, it looks like you are. And you can use that quite easily and quite quickly to verify yourself with European banks and so on. Yeah. Of course, in many cases, you can also use the stuff you have from your old home country. Many people want to avoid that for understandable reasons. However, it's pretty safe to do. If you have if you come from Germany and have a German tax number, you will never lose that. You have that from birth to death, and you still have any old address or even like an old personal account where there's still a German address inside. You can use that very well to verify yourself other bank accounts. Of course, that might lead to like information exchange with Germany or with the country you state, and that's an issue for many people.
Yeah, it's one of the most common questions we get, and registering any address with a KYC with a bank does not lead to taxation. It may lead to information exchange, but not taxation. How is your experience with owning properties in Turkey and having Turkish citizenship while having Paraguayan residency and staying up to 180 days in Turkey?
Well, I don't really get the question. Of course, you can have Paraguay residency and combine it with Turkish residency or citizenship if you stay maximum half a year in Turkey. Yeah? Nothing will be triggered, even if you're a Turkish citizen. Up to half a year, you can stay there without any issues. And having Paraguay residency could be a nice extra. But I'm not a Turkish citizen, so I can't. I don't have any experience myself.
Is it possible to register my apartment in the LLC to make sure it's safe for seizures, government seizures restraint, or what is a good option? I guess it's about property protection.
It depends on the jurisdiction. Yeah, the thing is, it's not possible to have your property in LLC in any jurisdiction around the world. In Germany, that's possible because there's a special treaty between the US and Germany, which makes it possible for LLCs to own land to be into the deeds registry in Germany. But in other countries, it really depends if there is such a treaty as well. So in some countries it's possible, but in many countries it's not. You can either do it privately, or you can do it with a local company, but not foreign companies. Like within the European Union, any EU company can own property in any other EU country. But in many other countries, in like Latin America, only local companies are allowed. So of course you can have an LLC with a subsidiary Colombian company, which then owns the property, but you cannot own it directly with the LLC. I mean, you maybe could have to research that depending on the country. But that's the main point. You're often not like entitled to own property with a foreign entity.
10 years US LLC after your recommendations and living the digital nomad life. Want to find a place to settle, Thailand, Vietnam, or Philippines. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, that could all be interesting countries from a pure tax perspective. Thailand and Philippines is still very nice. Vietnam is a bit worse, but can be structured quite well as well. The Philippines nowadays has a nice program. I mean, it's pretty easy to stay long-term in the Philippines anyway, but we have this program. It's quite costly though, but if you pay 25K and put another 75 on a bank account, you get like permanent residence in the Philippines and even a path to citizenship after 10 years, which is quite rare for Asia. So this program could be very interesting for people who earn a bit more money. Most people, of course, prefer Thailand, which has far more visa options. From a pure tax perspective, however, Philippines is easier because in Philippines it's pure territorial taxation. You can even wire the money into the Philippines and don't pay any tax for it. Yeah. So generally, I personally like the Philippines. I would personally probably favor the Philippines over Thailand, but it's really up to everyone. Yeah.
What are my options when I'm a perpetual traveler with a US LLC and still want to hire employees as web design studio?
Want to hire employees. There's a lot of different options how you can do it. Yeah, the most typical are you don't have employees, you just have freelancers. Yeah, especially if they are outside of like high tax countries, like a remote team. Like Xenia is my remote employee. She is not liable to taxes in any country, so she can easily be like even a deemed employee, yeah, which is a problem in Germany, like high payment of social security and so on. But if the team is remote and doesn't pay taxes, it's the best. If they're in a like tax liable country, it's also possible, but then you should like invoice them with multiple companies. Yeah. So for example, if Xenia would live in Germany, but I pay her from 3 of my companies, it's not a big deal either. Then you have the option of a so-called employer of record. There's so-called payroll companies. It's just service providers who hire the employees on your behalf and want a certain monthly fee for that. Yeah. Often you can only do that for 18 months. But if you have another company again, first company 18 months, then other company 18 months, and then the same starts again. However, I would say that's only worth it for the first or second employee. And then, of course, you can just form a local entity. For example, you either form an entity where your employees are based, especially if you want the office. Yeah, but you don't run the business over this. You only run, you only like invoice the cost of the company, the employees, the office, to the LLC, for example. You can also do that in like other European countries, like Bulgaria. We often do that. We do a cheap Bulgarian company, which is there doing the stuff for hiring the employees and so on. So there's a lot of different options. Now, the big question is why don't employ directly with the LLC? That's possible, but that generally triggers taxation because there's no tax treaty between the US and many other countries. And if there's no tax treaty, employee will generally trigger taxation where the employee is based. So that could be an issue.
All right. I'm living permanently in Brazil, paying taxes here. When my company is in Paraguay, receiving payments from the EU, I can pay me dividends in Brazil and don't pay taxes?
Yeah, it's not so easy. Generally, yes, you don't pay taxes on dividends in Brazil on local companies, but on foreign companies is another deal. And I mean, a Paraguayan company has 10% taxation as well. You're not tax-free on Paraguayan companies. You only are tax-free personally in Paraguay, not on Paraguay companies.
Okay. What apps or techniques can be used if you want to buy a car worth 100,000 euros in crypto and use that car in Austria without issues?
Well, want to buy a car 100,000 in crypto? I mean, it really depends. What's the situation? Are you tax resident in Austria or not? If you're a tax resident, of course, you need to declare the car and the value of the car, and you might to pay income taxes on it. But I mean, I don't really understand the question.
Okay.
Maybe rewrite it again.
We'll go to the next one. We have a lot of questions. Buying real estate in Paraguay and Brazil via a Paraguayan EAS, living in Austria, any way to lower the tax rate?
Well, you only have the option basically in Paraguay: do it personally or do it over a company. And taxes are pretty much the same. Yeah, if you pay 10% income tax or 10% corporate tax, it's not a big difference. But generally, you're more flexible, especially selling the properties if you have EIS, because in Paraguay you can still very well do share deals. So you don't sell the property, you sell the company owning the property, and if it's within a holding structure, you can generally do it tax-free.
Right, this one we can't answer because we don't know where you're from. Should I have a Paraguay residency if I plan to be a PT and work as a programmer with a US LLC? Depends on where he's currently a tax resident.
I mean, Paraguay residency can always make sense for everyone, even if it's not a tax residency. Yeah, you just have like a additional driver's license you get, ID card you get. Just the security of having some residence you can always go to, because I mean, it's not directly permanent anymore like it was for me 9 years ago, but now you get it for 2 years, and after 2 years you can basically convert it to a permanent one. So I think it's a good one to have. Everyone should do it, especially since it's still relatively straightforward at the moment and it can always change. Yeah, like I also did Panama 9 years ago. $5,000 on a bank account, company formation. Now the same program, the Friendly Nations visa, it's a $300,000 real estate investment. Yeah, so it can change pretty quickly and be much more expensive as well.
Okay, is homeschooling in Southeast Asian countries in general allowed or tolerated for foreigners?
Generally, yes. Of course, it depends how long you stay in those countries. But if you stay less than half a year, if you're not resident at all, if you're considered tourist, it's generally not an issue at all. If you stay there for more than half a year, it can be an issue in certain countries. It really depends on the countries. But generally, in Southeast Asia, it's pretty easy because in most schools where they speak exotic languages with like different alphabets and so on, they don't really want foreign kids and trying to get them into their system. Yeah.
I'm a perpetual traveler and want to settle in Spain. Not sure if it's better to start a business in Spain or in any other European country, mainly German customers.
Yeah, I mean, I already explained the Beckham law in the previous question. So it makes sense to use this Beckham law for 6 years and be tax-free on foreign income. And then obviously don't use a Spanish company, or not like mainly a Spanish company, but any other company. That can be a US LLC. That can also be other European companies, for example, in Bulgaria or in Malta. And with that, you can have German customers. I mean, it really depends on what you're doing. For some people, like needing a lot of recognition from German customers, you could, for example, found the company in Switzerland, pay a little bit more tax, have a bit higher cost, but generally more reputation. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you're selling. But I wouldn't advise having your company in Spain. Yeah.
Eva asks, when I'm a perpetual traveler, no resident anywhere, how do I trade best? What is the best for a stock portfolio? And what do you think about Wells Fargo managed account?
Well, I would generally recommend not to have any accounts managed, but do it yourself, even if it's just like an ETF. You will probably fare better than on any managed account, especially you pay much less fees for that. And then if you just like select a couple of index funds around the world in nice markets, they probably perform better than any professional stock manager can ever do. Like the practical side as the perpetual traveler, you can easily have a brokerage account. You just know how to do it. Yeah, generally you need a utility bill and a tax number to open a brokerage account. Typical ones our clients open are, for example, Interactive Brokers, Swissquote, or DEGIRO. And there you can do stock trading completely tax-free. Yeah, the issue you have to understand with many brokers is if they're regulated in a certain country like Germany and you register there with a German address, then the tax is deducted automatically. And you can only like go out of this automatic deduction if you change your address outside of the country or if you open an international broker. But if you have set that up, then you can trade anywhere tax-free. And for stock portfolio, I mean, it is a very broad question. It really also depends. Do you want to go on capital gains? Do you want to go on dividends? With dividends, we have again the issue of withholding taxes. Yeah, like if you have a US company which pays dividends, there has to be 30% withholding tax. So for example, for me as a perpetual traveler, I don't have much stocks, but the stocks I own are mostly from countries without withholding tax. For example, I have a couple of stocks from Singapore and from the UK, because these are the two main countries which are good for stocks, but don't have any withholding taxes.
Very good. Is it possible to set up an anonymous LLC and still open a bank and a brokerage account?
Yes, that's pretty much possible. You can have an anonymous LLC in many states. We mostly do it in New Mexico. Yeah, it's not completely anonymous, but it's nicely done. In every US state, you have a like public trade registry where the name and like the formation date of the LLC appears, but not necessarily who is the manager or who is the owner. Now the so-called transparency register in the US, the BOI filing, beneficial owner filing, was cancelled by the Trump administration. So it was like obligation for a couple of weeks, but then it was completely cancelled. So you don't have to do it. You can do it voluntarily, but you don't have to do it. So no more filing of beneficial owners of the company, no public trade registry of the owners, and US bank accounts, business bank accounts are not exchanged with any other country either. So yes, you can do it. And the anonymous LLC can get a bank account still pretty easily, especially within the US. Outside the US, it's a bit more an issue because many EU banks require the company owners to be transparent. But within the US, you get an account with basically any bank. Of course, you have to tell the bank who the owner is. That's clear. You cannot be completely anonymous to anyone. The bank needs to know who you are, but it won't exchange it to any other person.
In which country should we marry to avoid inheritance tax? She's Austrian, he's Italian, and we live in Switzerland, and we plan to have children in the future. We own properties in Germany and Italy.
Well, it's completely doesn't matter where you marry. You can marry anywhere in the world. It's always based on where you're actually living. Yeah, inheritance is always about where you live and then also where the assets are located. If you have property in Germany and Italy, you always have property tax. Inheritance tax in Germany or Italy. And then you can have additional taxes, which are based again in double tax treaties if you live in Switzerland. But it's not about where you marry. The location of marriage is only like how easy it is to marry or not to marry. So there's certain countries where you can marry very easily. For example, in the US, in Utah, you can even marry online via Zoom within 5 minutes, and it's done. And it's very easy for everyone in the world to do. Or in Europe, many people go to Denmark. We offer that service as well, because you need much less documents than in many other countries. That's the point about like flag theory applied on marriage. Yeah, it's about like the bureaucracy, how easy it is to marry someone else. But inheritance completely doesn't relate to the location you actually marry.
Is Namibia recommended as a tax residence with foreign income only?
Yes, Namibia is still a good place for that. Generally tax-free on foreign income. However, you should really consider the place of supply. So again, if you are like providing services from Namibia and don't have foreign employees and managers and so on, it can be considered local income and still be taxed. So that's like one of the traps of territorial taxation. You should always be careful how the territoriality is defined in that particular country. Yeah. In some countries like Paraguay, it's pretty flexible. Like as long as the money comes from outside of Paraguay, you're fine. But in many other countries in Africa and in Asia, it's really about where you provide the service, and then it can be an issue.
To buy property in Thailand, you need a Thai partner with 51%. How do you find someone for a utility bill or for buying a house?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily the case. It really depends what you want to buy. For land, yes, except you have the right visa. There's certain investor visas nowadays where you can have 100% land on your name. Also, if you just want to buy an apartment, I mean, there is this many like condominium complexes in Thailand, and they have a nice rule, like as long as 51% of the owners of this condominium complexes are Thai, the other 49% can be completely the property of foreigners. But yes, if you want to buy land and need someone, it's often wise not to have one with 51%, just have multiple ties, 3, 4, 5 different people, because that gives you much more legal security, especially if those people don't know each other. Yeah. But of course, how to find it? Generally, you need the local brokers, local people with the right ideas, which are still reputable, to set you up with that.
How easy is it to live in countries such as Spain only for half a year, rent a flat, and then only be there for half a year and not become tax liable? Just rent and good to go?
Yes, in Spain it's pretty straightforward. Of course, you need to find someone to rent you a flat for half a year. Some renters make problems if you don't want to register, but generally Spain is pretty straightforward to do that. So once you have the rental contract, especially only for half a year, it's not an issue. Like I said, even a rental contract for 1 year is not an issue as well in Spain.
I currently live in Germany and have developed an app that brings in around 800 euros a month. When would moving companies to different countries start making sense? Are there pitfalls I should be aware of?
Well, I always say immigrating Germany, leaving Germany is not about the income. You can always do it. And it basically makes sense already if you do 800 a month, because probably you will earn more in future. And you might have an exit tax or any other problems leaving Germany if you wait too long. Also, even like with 800 euros a month only, you probably need a tax advisor in Germany, and that tax advisor costs more money and more gray hair than having a tax-free company living internationally. So if you want to live globally, tax-free, you can do it always in our eyes. Yeah, just leave the country, but only if you want it. Of course, if you rather want to stay in Germany, then stay in Germany. And then like optimizing internationally within Germany, I would say you need at least 70,000, 80,000 euros in profit in order that it makes sense to do like legal structures.
Very good. In which low country can you get a tax ID quickly and easily?
Yeah, I mean, we offer that service in Paraguay. It's not very quickly. You first need to get residency, which takes around 2 months, and you need to visit there once. And then you come back for like the second step of the residency and stay a bit longer in the country. I think 5 days after you get the cedula in Paraguay, you can apply for the tax number. So it's around, I would say, 2 to 3 months. You can get a tax number in Paraguay. You can easily combine that, of course, then with the residency permit. It's not in any case needed that you have a residency permit to get a tax number. In many countries, also a good way to do it is just rent a little flat and then re-rent it on Airbnb. And then you have to pay taxes on the profit you make. But it's only restricted tax liability only on the rental income. And because you have to pay taxes on rental income, you obviously get a tax number. So you can do that basically in any country. You can legally rent or buy a flat, re-rent it, and get a tax number in that country. That could also work.
How does taxation work if you buy US shares, ETFs as an LLC and then generate income from them? For example, dividends, how high is taxation on these?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic because that really depends how the LLC is treated tax-wise. Generally, we speak of non-resident LLCs, yeah? So if you use a tax-free LLC, it's considered non-resident. It's a US company by like civil law, company law, but it's not considered a US company by tax law because the US LLC is tax transparent. You pay taxes wherever you are resident. So generally, like a tax-free LLC pays complete withholding taxes in the US. So if you have a US dividend, you still pay 30% withholding tax because it's not considered a US company tax-wise. Yeah. So you cannot use a US LLC to optimize withholding taxes in the US. It's important to understand. And that's also the reason why a US LLC is very good for many, many things, but it's not good as a holding company, and it's not so good if it has IP income, intellectual property income from the US, like royalties from music, from apps, and so on. There is better companies for that because they can apply the tax treaty. A non-resident LLC cannot use the tax treaty.
What happened to your walnut investments in Georgia? I hope it still runs well.
Yes, it runs very well. I mean, you can inform yourself on our Walnuts webpage, walnuts.ge. I mean, I can make a little announcement. We are soon starting to sell our walnuts over the website. We found a nice distributor who imports the walnuts to Germany. And everyone soon, in a couple of weeks, can go to our website and order their own package of Staatenlos walnuts to their home. So we have someone else like doing all the import, all the taxes. We just provide you with the link, and then you can buy a lot of walnuts. Still working very well. We did a lot of investments. It's the biggest walnut plantation now in Georgia, soon in Europe. And yeah, I tasted them already. They're pretty nice.
Yeah, I tasted them too at our 10-year anniversary celebration. And for those that don't know, Christoph likes to do kind of long-term investments. And so even the walnut, when did you first start investing in that? Years ago, 7-8 years ago?
9 years ago, we started a walnut investment. Still, I can tell I never received any single dividend so far. The thing is, we reinvested a lot of money. Now the project is 4 times bigger than we imagined 8 years ago. There's a lot of like loans which need to be paid back first, so probably still another 2-3 years until we get a dividend. But then it's a very nice retirement income, I always say.
Yeah. You also have a wine farm in Argentina, and then this one. And sometimes we also get our community to help invest in some of these projects, which was the case earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the wine farm is more like an expensive hobby, I always say. It's more luxury than an investment, but it might be investment long term if the wine has a lot of people who want to buy it. And I mean, we sponsored it on a couple of events, and some people really like it. So I hope there is some money return potential on the wine as well.
Is there an easy solution if I am in Canada or the US to create a company like an LLC with a VAT number that need to make partnerships with other companies, for example, Shopify?
Well, if you want a VAT number, you shouldn't form a non-EU company. I mean, it's possible, but it really depends what you do. Yeah, if you sell e-commerce within European Union, of course, you can get a VAT number for the LLC as well. But in like services, you generally cannot get a VAT number for a foreign company. So if you want a EU VAT number, there's similar structures to the LLC also in Europe. For example, a limited partnership in Cyprus or in Malta or in Ireland. It's basically the same. It's tax transparent. It's tax-free if used similar to LLC. It has accounting, of course, but it can also get the VAT number. Yeah. The US doesn't know any value-added taxes. There's a sales tax in the US, but only on physical products and only from certain thresholds. And in certain states, some states don't have a sales tax at all. And there is no general VAT. You can just get like DIN, the general tax number.
Hello, Christoph. Do you have any strategies for US citizens who already hold residency in Paraguay, Panama, or Mexico, but continue working remotely online, specifically for those receiving W-2 income? What are the legal ways to reduce the high US tax burden?
Yeah, I mean, if you live outside the US as a US citizen, you can claim the foreign living exemption. Yeah, around, that changes every year, but around $120,000 are tax-free as an employee. So what many people do is they form an offshore company, are employed in that offshore company, and have the first 120K tax-free. But higher than that, generally, you need to pay taxes. Offshore companies also need to pay taxes in some regards. The US taxation law is pretty complex on that. It just recently changed with the big beautiful bill again. So there's some nice loopholes again. I just read today. But it's generally difficult as a US citizen. There's one solution: move to Puerto Rico. Yeah, in Puerto Rico, as like the 51st state of the US, many people say that. There's legal ways for US citizens to really lower their taxes to very low. However, that means you need to stay almost half a year there. So yeah, of course you can give up the American passport if you like.
Here's one for me. Where am I? I'm on a boat in Norway and Christoph's in a car in Sweden. So we're both very far north in colder areas of Europe. Does the digital dollar or digital euro change the model of US LLCs? What do you think will change then?
I don't think it will change much or anything at all. I mean, this is just about the currency. I don't think all other bank accounts or so on will be prohibited. And I mean, the US just basically decided there won't be any CBDC coming. It's basically a law now. I mean, you have kind of a digital dollar in terms of like competing stable coins. But this is like pretty good for the LLCs. I mean, it's something I use myself now. Like for my business bank account, I pay a salary to my personal crypto account, which runs in the US. Yeah, it's a US dollar account, personal, but it's directly on the blockchain. And I can directly from the US dollar bank account send USDC or USDT or like put it on my crypto debit card to spend it and so on. So I think, I mean, it really depends how you see it. Of course, the state digital dollar could make issues, but like the crypto digital dollars are pretty useful to use together with LLC, for example.
If you got a confirmation of residence from a country outside Europe, does that work for compliance reasons as a utility bill?
Really depends on the platform you use it for, but mostly not. Most banks always want a utility bill. Sometimes they're fine with like credit card statements or bank statements with an address. But like pure like residency confirmations without any address won't work. If they have an address on them, they could work.
Are there secure accounts in America or Europe without banking data exchange? Is a business address required?
Banking data exchange is probably a question. I mean, US business bank accounts are not exchanged. That's always a solution, but you need to form an LLC for that. In Europe, there's always data exchange, except for Northern Cyprus. Northern Cyprus, because it's not a recognized country, doesn't have any data exchange. Of course, there's also like Transnistria and all those other non-recognized countries, but forgot about banking in them. North Cyprus still has not the worst like British banks with local offices, so it can be a good place to hide money. We also offer bank accounts in the Dominican Republic. That's a good solution as well, for example, especially if you have funds or if you live in Latin America. The Dominican Republic can really make sense. Yeah, we offer bank account openings there.
If I want to live in South Korea, Germany, and the US in retirement, is this a good combination? Which country could be a nice add-on?
Yes, I mean, generally it's a good combination. You can stay up to half a year in both South Korea and Germany. You can stay generally up to half a year in the US, but there's the so-called substantial presence test. So like the average of 3 years of stay is also calculated with a certain formula. Generally, you can say if you're less than 120 days each year, you're safe in the US. So up to 4 months, long term is safe in the US. I would say up to 4 months in Germany as well, up to 4 months in Korea as well. The nice thing about the US, you can have a home in the US without triggering anything, like similar to Spain. You can have own a house in the US that never triggers a tax residence in itself. So buy your house wherever you want in the US. You can do the same in South Korea. Only in Germany, it's difficult with your own home. You should, mostly stay with family and friends, or in hotels, or in short-term rentals, or so on, if you are in Germany during that time. And like another nice country, I mean, basically all the world is open, yeah. That would be like a fourth country for like 3 months. You can do that basically in every country in the world. Yeah.
Right, there are a lot of very Germany-specific countries.
Yeah, we don't do Germans ones now. We're already here for 70 minutes, so maybe 10 more minutes for the English ones, and then we do another one probably soon.
If I want to live in a country with territorial taxation, such as Panama or the Dominican Republic, and only have foreign income, is a US LLC necessary or useful?
I mean, it's not necessary, but it's generally useful, yeah, because, I mean, if you are in such a country like Panama and Dominican Republic, you shouldn't use local companies. Sometimes, not always, the territoriality also extends to the local companies, yeah. For example, Paraguay, that's not the case. In Paraguay, you pay 10% corporate taxes. In Panama, at the moment, you still are tax-free with a Panama company as well on foreign income. However, Panama now has like obligatory accounting. It's not very well reputable. It's very bad with bank accounts. So because of those reasons, you still generally want to use a LLC because it's more recognized. It has much easier access to bank accounts, much more other features, and this is cheaper and easier to handle. So generally, it's better to combine residencies in those countries with companies somewhere else.
Can a beginner perpetual traveler use the private bank account for business transactions?
Yes, you can. From a tax perspective, you can do legally, but it's very important to not use an old bank account on a sole entrepreneurship or self-employment, because that can actually trigger taxes, because they argue that you basically use the same details, like the old tax number, the old address, and so on. But if it's a real personal account, you can do it from a tax perspective. However, you will run into problems because most banks will close down your account if you use personal accounts for business transactions. That can work for a while. I actually did it myself 10 years ago when I started out. But I got a letter from the bank that my account will be closed if I don't, cancel those transactions. So that's when I formed my first LLC 10 years ago. Also, of course, you have to consider you don't have any protection then, yeah, no liability, no limited liability and things like that. Especially, for example, if you have LLC and then use a private account, then your LLC doesn't really exist, yeah, because you get the money on your personal name and not on the LLC name.
Are there any strategies for US citizens who hold residency in Paraguay, Panama, Mexico, and are working remotely online?
We already had that.
Oh yeah, sorry, we already had that. I must have. Same question. How can I get a PayPal business account from a US LLC?
Yeah, that's a bit tricky. It's generally possible, but you have to first cross the right box when it's about the entity selection, and then you have to give the right data to PayPal. generally you also need to provide the US residential address. Yeah, you cannot verify PayPal with a foreign address. So it's possible to open. We have some clients using it successfully, but we have a lot of clients not being able to open or being kicked out from PayPal pretty quickly. So in my eyes, it really depends on what you choose as an entity in the beginning. What often is a wiser solution is using a private PayPal account. I do that for 10 years very successfully with very high turnover. It's not a business PayPal account, it's a personal PayPal account running on Germany, connected to a German bank account, and like used together with the right payment providers. In our case, it's called Sendol. It's very successful, and you can even use it if you do big business. Yeah.
Backup registry in Panama versus Paraguay. What's your take? What would you recommend and why?
I mean, generally, I would recommend both if both are possible. Paraguay is easier. Panama, like the permanent residency, is much harder. 300K real estate investment for many nations. However, it's still possible to get temporary residency in Panama rather easily as well, with forming a company and certain other conditions. It's only temporary then for 5 years, while in Paraguay it will be pretty easily permanent after 2. But even like a temporary residency is fine and gives you a certain protection, yeah. But generally, I would nowadays first always do Paraguay. However, I mean, if you plan to live there, depends. Some people find Panama more attractive, of course, than Paraguay.
How can I trade legally tax-free as a digital nomad?
Yeah, if you don't have any tax residency anymore, if you're not liable to taxes in your home country, you can trade tax-free. If it's like active day trading, I think, your capital gains are tax-free. If it's related more to dividends or interest, of course, you have issues with withholding taxes. Then this really depends what you need to do. If you mean with trading, like selling on e-commerce platforms, it's also possible, but then you always have to consider VAT. Yeah, especially if you sell into Europe, it's basically not possible to legally avoid value-added taxes. And in many other countries, you often have value-added taxes as well. But you can generally optimize income tax and corporate taxes and don't pay any taxes in that regard. Yeah.
What do you think about Mauritius as a place to retire and have a tax residence?
I'm personally not a big fan of Mauritius, but it can be a very nice place to retire. It has a lot of different visa programs, especially for retirees. It's rather easy to get a retirement visa there. It has the non-dom scheme, similar like to Malta and Ireland, that foreign income is tax-free as long as it's not remitted to the country. So you just like remit a little bit of income, pay taxes on that, like 15%, and the rest will be tax-free. So for people living off capital gains, or even entrepreneurs with like foreign companies, it can be a very nice place to retire. Just like personal reasons, I wouldn't go there. I think there's nicer countries around the world, but still, it's not a bad place. Yeah.
Which international bank accounts do you recommend for checking accounts and transfers for expats, perpetual travelers who want a bank account outside of their country of birth?
I mean, it's a very general question. There are so many bank account opportunities nowadays. I would say you should have one proper bank account in your home country. You should have one like or 2 or 3 like backup accounts in the European Union, like Revolut, Wise, Bank, and how they are called. You should always have one bank account, one proper bank account outside of the European Union. For example, in Georgia, what we offer a lot is this remote account opening in Georgia with TBC or Bank of Georgia solo. So this is a good account to start with. If you have a bit more money, you can deposit it into like a Liechtenstein bank or Singapore bank or Channel Islands bank. But you don't need too much bank accounts, I would say. Yeah. You should also have one crypto-friendly bank because, of course, you should have some crypto. So this is everything I would recommend. But it's yeah. Definitely, you should have a bank account outside the country of your birth, or outside the block of your birth. I always say, yeah. If you see EU or Mercosur or whatever. Yeah.
Do I need to pay taxes on my crypto income if I'm not a resident registered anywhere, I guess is what it's saying.
Generally not. Crypto capital gains and everything other crypto income will be completely tax-free if you have no tax residence anywhere. Currently, there is no withholding tax whatsoever on crypto.
And here's one about Costa Rica. I have a tax number in Costa Rica to get my earnings from an online business. I lived there for about 6 to 8 months. Do I have to pay taxes on the online income that is transferred to a bank in Costa Rica?
Currently not. Costa Rica had a tax reform recently, but that doesn't apply. That's a big misunderstanding. That doesn't apply to natural persons. Yeah. So Costa Rica, similar to Panama, had their business income, like corporate income, also territorial taxed. No tax on foreign income on companies. But they got a lot of issues with the EU for that. They were set on the blacklist for like harmful tax jurisdictions. And because they wanted to be removed, they started to tax companies on foreign income as well, similar to like Paraguay 6 years ago. But that only applies to companies. So if you don't use a Costa Rica company, but a foreign company as a personal tax resident in Costa Rica, the income is still tax-free.
And I don't want to pay taxes anymore since taxes are theft. Yes. I will go the US LLC route and move to Cyprus. What do I have to consider? Can you recommend a bank or an offshore account?
Yeah, if you want to move to Cyprus, it really depends where in Cyprus, North Cyprus or South Cyprus. North Cyprus officially has high taxes, but it's not really strict. So basically, North Cyprus is territorial taxation. Foreign income is tax-free. I don't know anyone who actually pays any income tax on foreign income in Cyprus. So that can be very well combined with the LLC. If you mean Southern Cyprus, which is more probable, the EU part, it's a bit tricky with the LLC because in Southern Cyprus, the non-nom status means that only dividends are tax-free, but normal income is taxed progressively up to 35%. And if you use a LLC, that money flowing through the LLC is generally considered income and will be taxed with the 35% plus additional social security. So we still have lots of clients using LLC from Southern Cyprus. They have to put like another holding company in between. We mostly use the Seychelles, like a tax-free Seychelles offshore company, which is like a member of the LLC. So the LLC income is going to the Seychelles tax-free, and from there then as a dividend tax-free to Cyprus. And in order to make that work, you need like a foreign manager in the Seychelles entity, which is rather easy and cheap to get. So the complete setup, like a Seychelles company with foreign manager, is around 4K. So with the LLC together, 5K more or less, and you have a completely tax-free and accounting-free company from South Cyprus, and you don't need to pay 12.5% in the Cyprus company.
Okay. Are you good for one more?
Yeah, we can do one more or two more, and then we need to move forward. Still 3 hours of driving.
Is there a need for a compliance residency as a PT, perpetual traveler, with a US LLC? By now is all fine, but is there need in the future for banking, KYC, or crypto or tax office documents?
I mean, it really depends on the person. If he is fine with the account he set up, he can use it as long as possible, yeah? I mean, I did very little changes on my personal banking over the last 10 years. I still use pretty much what I set up back then. But I had to make a lot of changes on the business level because every year, like my bank accounts get canceled and I need a new business bank account. Generally, like the old details from the home country are sufficient in many cases. But once they're not anymore, it's time to look for compliance residency. And of course, I always say be on the safe side, prepare over time, prepare any compliance residency, and then just have everything or already use it to open like backup bank accounts. And then you don't need to react swiftly when you maybe don't want to.
Yeah, there was a question about how easily is the Paraguay residency being retired? And Paraguay residency in general is one of the easiest residencies to obtain, at least for now. So we always say better to get it now than wait as, things and laws change. And
Always get it. I mean, everyone get it, even if you're unemployed or student or whatever. Basically, there is no requirements at the moment. You just have to pay the lawyer, ferrying you around Asunción, and of course, paying your flight there and so on. But other than that, it's only the cost and basically no requirements other than like a clean police certificate and things like that.
Okay. I want to live off my capital income, interest, dividends, capital gains. Which country would be a good base to minimize my taxes, including withholding tax? Unfortunately, I can't do PT, perpetual traveling.
Yeah, I mean, in case you want to optimize withholding taxes, it's actually better to not be PT, but to live full-term in a country and be a tax resident with a tax residency certificate. Best country generally is Cyprus, because in Cyprus you can be tax-free on capital gains and dividends, and at the same time use very good tax treaties to use all like the withholding taxes. Basically the same also possible in Malta and Ireland. So those three in Europe are very good because you can be tax-free on everything, or you only pay very little taxes, and you have very good tax treaties to reduce withholding taxes. Cyprus 2 months stay, Malta 3 to 6 months stay, Ireland 3.5 to 6 months stay. Yeah.
Okay, and those that have asked, yes, this will be recorded on our YouTube channel for Staatenlos and Denationalized.me, so you can watch the recording.
We will probably do it again next month or so. This is, like Xenia said, it's mainly intended for international speakers. Of course, we answered some German speakers as well. German speakers have so much other opportunities to ask us questions online, over our channels, over our consultings. It's mainly to reach our more international customer base.
Yeah, be sure to sign up for newsletters on Staatenlos or Denationalized.me so that you can find out about the next Ask Us Anything session, like Christoph said, next month or whenever we will plan it. So be sure to check there so you can ask more questions then. I think with that, we will conclude it. Christoph, thank you for your time. Safe travels in Sweden. And
the question here is to answer that, and then we can conclude it. Is there any faster way to get tax residency than Paraguay? I think we didn't answer that yet. And I mean, there is a few things you can do, but generally you have to pay a minimum tax. Yeah, you need to pay like $20,000 in minimum tax, and then get tax residency. In Paraguay is cheaper. Basically, you need to pay around less than $1,000 a year for like accountant doing the monthly tax declarations, and based on that, doing that like 4 times, you can get your tax residency certificate. There will be a nice option coming soon. I can tell that in Prospera. Yeah, Prospera is the so-called free city in Honduras, like a special autonomous zone. And we know that from August on, they will offer tax residency for digital nomads when they pay like a certain lump sum tax, only a couple of $1,000s. You pay that, and then even without staying there, you get a tax residency certificate from that like special zone within Honduras, which will be recognized worldwide. So that could be a nice alternative. It's not public yet, but I think it will be soon.
So that would even work, Christoph, for people that are registered currently living in a country like Spain that need to show proof of a new tax residency to not be a tax resident anymore?
Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, this is a question I get a lot. Of course, it doesn't work if you live in Germany or in Spain or anywhere else more than half a year. And then you show your tax resident certificate and they say, I can't be liable to taxes anymore. That won't work. You still have to avoid all the criteria of being a tax resident in those countries. But of course, Xenia, yes, if you need tax residency in order to get out of the country where you're taxed, then it will work, yes.
Perfect. That was the question to confirm for the community, because that's a popular one. We have a lot of people that are residents in a place that need to show proof.
Yeah, especially Spain is very strict on that. If you leave Spain, you always need a tax residency certificate. Otherwise, Spain will continue to tax you until eternity. Yeah.
Very good. In that case, thank you everyone who joined. Stay tuned for the next Ask Me Anything session, and we will be in touch with you through our social media, newsletter, and website channels. Follow us on Instagram, sign up for the newsletter, check out our webpage, staatenlos.ch or denationalized.me, and see you guys next time. Bye.
Yes, ask me anything. Of course, more than tax questions also invited. Yeah. See you next time.